We've all experienced it. Time suddenly stands still and we are so immersed in the task that the rest of the world seems to fade away and nothing else matters. It could be a test at school, running a marathon, a discussion with a close friend, or an intense game of chess. What if I told you that being in this state of what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls flow creates order of our consciousness and thereby enhance meaning in life and reduce anxiety? We will take a closer look on how to reach that state more often and improve the overall quality of life. This is Detox Dan presenting the top 5 takeaways of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's Flow. Takeaway number 1. Optimal experience. By interviewing and studying thousands of people from different backgrounds of life, Mihaly summed up his results beautifully. Quote, "The best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult or worthwhile." Unquote. It didn't matter if the subjects were old, young, elite athletes, or amateur musicians, men or women, the experience was described almost identically. One chess player explained, "The concentration is like breathing. You never think of it. The roof could fall in, and if it missed you, you would be unaware of it." When in flow, we feel in control of our inner life. We are so immersed in the task that our negative thoughts temporarily evaporate. Even after experiencing flow, the feeling partly remains and we have become more complete individuals. Thus, being in flow makes us happy. To experience this optimal state, we need to alter our attention, or psychic energy. It must be invested in pursuits worthwhile by setting up clear goals and getting constant feedback on the process. The feedback is crucial to figure out at what level we are at and what needs to improve. As we progress, we must constantly update our goals to match our new level of skill to stay in the flow channel. Takeaway number 2. The flow channel. To stay in flow during an activity, we need to be in the flow channel. This can be illustrated through a flow diagram. On one axis, we have our perceived skill, and on the other one, the degree of challenge. The flow channel is where the two of these align. A new guitar player could reach flow simply through strumming some basic chords, while the advanced guitar player would need to add some solos or perhaps an audience. If a challenge requires more skill than we currently possess, we will experience anxiety. This is suboptimal for flow, and the way out of it is to scale back the challenge for now or develop higher skills. If the challenge is too easy, we will experience boredom, and the solution for that is upping the stakes. By moving towards the upright corner of the flow channel, we keep living the optimal experience. This is where we evolve and discover new things about ourselves. Takeaway number 3. Control your consciousness. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius said about 2000 years ago, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." He had already figured out a fundamental feature about life. Happiness is determined by how we interpret external experiences. This is a skill that can be cultivated by learning how to control one's consciousness. In the East, this has been practiced in sophisticated ways for millennia, through meditation and other mindfulness practices. The yogis disciplines their minds to ignore biological needs like hunger and sexual arousal, thus being in full control of their mental energy and attention. When that is accomplished, entering a state of flow is easy. But to achieve this, simply knowing what to do is not sufficient. One must practice constantly just like any other skill. Progress is known to be painfully slow when it comes to modified desires and habits, but it is arguably the most rewarding thing one can do. Entering a flow state and controlling one's consciousness is available through any activity that requires your full concentration. By meeting the criteria explained in Takeaway 2, a good balance between skill and challenge, and a clear goal with direct feedback, most tasks can have transformative outcomes. After being immersed in any task so intensely that a loss of self occurs, the self will paradoxically be more well-structured and satisfied with being afterwards. A rock climber interviewed in this book concluded, "It is exhilarating to come closer and closer to self-discipline. You make your body go and everything hurts. Then you look back in awe at the self, at what you've done. It just blows your mind. It leads to ecstasy, to self-fulfillment. If you win these battles enough, the battle against yourself, at least for a moment, it becomes easier to win the battles in the world. Takeaway number 4. Body in flow. Learning to control the body and its senses is the easiest way to reach flow. We have already talked about yoga-like activities as being a great path to a higher quality life. But any physical activity, like running for example, can be transformed into a flow activity by paying close attention to the skill and having proper goals. One might aim for endurance, having as much fun as possible, or trying to cut a few seconds off from rigorous intervals. When engaged in a physical activity, the mind is deeply involved in the activity as well. Even in running that is the case. But if we add some complexity to the sport, like martial arts, the body and mind connection becomes the central element. Kung Fu and Jiu-Jitsu, to name a few of these disciplines, were inspired by Taoism and Zen Buddhism. In the Eastern way of practicing these sports, the spiritual and mental state was at least equally as important as the physical performance. One of my favorite movie scenes is from The Last Samurai. When Tom Cruise is being beat up in a sword duel, his teacher tells him, "Too many mind." Takeaway number 5. Leisure time. C.K. Brightbill wrote, "The future will belong not only to the educated man, but to the man who is educated to use his leisure wisely." Instead of spending hours on end watching sports and random television shows in a state of apathy, we must take our free time seriously. We have more leisure time than ever before in history, and yet this extra free time seems to currently make us unhappier. Although following something mildly amusing on TV works okay for temporarily distracting the brain from negative thoughts, it doesn't lead to any positive permanent changes in consciousness. To improve the overall quality of life, we must engage mainly in flow-generating activities instead. One approach to this, that Mihaly suggests, is to commit to lifelong learning. To make learning a state of flow, it is important that we follow our interests and study mainly from intrinsic motivation. Memorizing facts about interesting topics also creates order to consciousness, and they can be called upon when bored. It has been told to be so powerful that many survivors of very harsh conditions, like concentration camps, got through it thanks to that, by for example contemplating mathematical problems or writing poetry in their heads. Hopefully none of us has to experience that, but it works for boring bus rides as well, as a substitute for scrolling. That was it for my top 5 takeaways of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's Flow. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.